So, first
Cool.
of all, can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty big question. So, I'm Jazz and I teach at Dunwoody College.
Yep.
And that's just a little bit of who I am and what I do. I do a lot of stuff outside of the college as well. So I consider myself an entrepreneur. I love starting businesses. I've gotten into 3D printing. I'll 3D print stuff and sell it online. I'll teach 3D printing workshops, work with the museums or different schools on 3D printing. Also, like I started a tent rental business. I work for Skyride Technology on Carnival Cruise. Like a lot of different things that I have my hands in, but that's what I love to do. I love to keep busy, and every single day looks different, and that's what kind of makes me.
Can you think back to when you were a kid? Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yeah. So way back, I always wanted to build and design roller coasters. That was my dream job as a
Awesome.
kid. We would go to Valley Fair and get season passes to other amusement parks around the country as well. And I just remember standing in line and looking at the rides and just being like, how does this work? How does it work every single time? Like you hardly ever see rides break down. How did the roller coaster get so tall? How is Power Tower there? That was what I would think about when I was in line. And
Yep.
then I really started getting into like Legos and Kinects, and I had the Kinects roller coaster, and I just kept building on that roller coaster tycoon, other games like that. And that dream is still there. I still love
Mm-hmm.
going to amusement parks. I still love rides, and maybe one day that comes to be. But it's always
Yeah.
been a dream of mine is amusement park rides.
Is there someone in STEM who you admire or who inspired you? Anyone particular you think of?
Um, that's a great
It's a hard
question.
question, isn't it?
Oh,
Sorry.
I haven't been asked that one before. Um, I guess to answer it a little bit different, I'm super inspired by my mom, actually, who is
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. She's always worked from home. She actually does embroidery, so a lot of local sports, a lot of local schools and businesses. She does their sweatshirts and polos and hats and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of grew up with her being in the house and watching her start her own business. So I think that's kind of where this entrepreneur side of me came from. And she's always been like my
Absolutely.
biggest support with everything. So I guess I don't have someone like a role model huge that's out there. I guess like smaller ones that I can think of, but really I think it's that like
Yeah.
local, homegrown, like
Yeah.
that drive that just came from home.
Can you tell us at all about any of the tools or skills that you use in your various projects?
Yeah. So my biggest one right now is 3D printing, which I got into by going to Dunwoody. The program I graduated in is engineering, drafting, design, kind of like product development. So a lot of CAD design, computer design, 3D modeling. And then with that, you need a way to build it. So it's one thing to just design something in the computer. And that's kind of more the hard part is actually learning how to use those design softwares. And then we would 3D print a lot of the components. So sometimes it was in the machine shop, machining metal parts or going to the laser cutter and cutting out parts. But the biggest one we used was 3D printing. And that totally grabbed my attention. Like this is so cool. I can pretty much walk up to this machine, hit a button, and then come back hours later and my part is it's just done. So then I actually built my very first 3D printer at Hennepin Tech. And it's a smaller printer. It was 8 by 8 by 8, I believe, print size. And very quickly I realized that one printer was not enough. And I just started getting into a bad habit of buying more and more printers. And now I have, I think, 17 of them. And they all have names. Those are my kids. Even being out of town, I bring them with me. So my biggest tool that I use, honestly, is the CAD design and 3D printing.
Yeah.
And even in my other areas of work that I do, so like Skyride Technology, for example, it's a bike that runs on a track on Carnival Cruise. Part of my job is swapping out some of those parts for 3D printed parts just because there's a strength to weight ratio that's a lot better than using metal parts. Like, do we need to use steel for this part? Instead, I could use like a nylon carbon fiber part that's a tenth of the weight. And anything on a cruise ship, or think of airplanes in the air, everything has to do with weight. We have strong weight requirements that we have to meet. So it always comes back to 3D printing for me. That's kind of who I am. But yeah.
Can you think of a time that you failed? And anything that you've learned from failing?
Yeah, so rather than failing, I like to call them challenges.
Okay,
And
like
one of
that.
the big ones was back in 2011. I just had a lot of family stuff going on, and like without getting into detail, it definitely set me back a little bit. In classes, I could see my grades were starting to go down, and I was always, a great student, always on the honor roll, and that's where it started flipping. So overcoming that, and then realizing that, staying true to yourself and who you are, and like the outside forces around you, try not to let them affect you as much as possible. And, it took me a while to get back up on my feet again, but once I did, I was like, okay, I'm going to allow this to push me forward and keep excelling. Like, this is why a lot of these times when I say, like, why not? Like, why not do it? It stems back from that happened. And like I said, I won't get into a lot of detail on it, but it was like, I want to give myself these opportunities that maybe someone else didn't have. Because why not? Like, if I get asked to do it, just go for it. Like, I want to skydive. Why not? Let's just go for it, type thing. So that's where my adventure side comes from. Keep doing what you're doing, whatever you're passionate about. Keep going with it, because you never know where you end up. I mean, the opportunities and the things that I do now, I never would have guessed I would be here 5 years ago, or even honestly last year. Like, no one could have predicted this year. No one could have predicted COVID happening, us being online right now and not being in person, but kind of taking advantage of these things that happen and still moving forward. Don't let anything external, kind of like I said before, define who you are. Whatever your dream or your passion is, just keep going with it.